Hi everybody, lovely, big warm welcome from myself, Alex, and my colleague Dan today.
Hi there.
We're here talking to you about water today, and we're from an organisation called Southern Water, who are the people that supply your water service all across Kent and the South Coast. We're here today to see if we can find some new recruits for our water heroes, and we're wondering if some of you guys out there have got what it takes to join us on a water saving mission, as Lisa said, to protect the wildlife and protect the environment and use water wisely. So I hope you're ready. We've got some challenging questions ahead and we've got lots of great bits of information to share with you today. Some of it's going to be really exciting and new, and some of it's going to be a bit yucky too. So we hope you're ready for this. My name's Alex and I look after the clean water supply at Southern Water.
I'm Dan and I help maintain the sewer network and help get some messages out to customers to help protect against sewer blockages.
Excellent stuff. Let's go. Next slide, please.
Okay, so this is our area that Southern Water operates within. So we've got areas where we just supply our fresh water to customers, and then we've got areas where we take away the dirty water. So when you pull the plug on your bath or when you're doing your washing up in the sink, some areas we just take away the wastewater, and then some areas we do both. We've got 367 treatment works in our areas, and we supply, is it 542 million litres of water every day to our customers. So that's a huge amount of water that we have to deliver. And then we've also got areas that we look after around the beaches, because we've got such a large coastal area. We have to make sure we have to be careful what goes back into the environment. So yeah, that's the area that we cover.
Have a look at the map, everybody. Perhaps you can see where your school is on this map. Perhaps you can put it in the chat box for us. Let us know if you can see yourselves on the map today. And we'd love to know which part of Kent you're from and joining us today. So we've seen already a couple of schools, Year 5 at Roseacres are here today. So welcome to all of you. And as Dan said, we've got some pretty impressive information. Southern Water looks after all the clean water supply for your region. So that's all the clean water that happens when you open the tap in the morning and that lovely clean water comes out. And as Dan said, when you flush the loo and pull the plug, we take away that water back into our pipe network, and that's called the sewer network. And that's all the work we do as well to help keep homes and keep everything running really smoothly in our county. So lots of interesting things. One more fact for you today, which I know me and Dan really love, which is that if you put together all of the pipe network that we at Southern Water use, we put it end to end, it would travel all the way to Australia and back again. So that's an awful lot of pipe network that we look after. So we're looking for you guys as well to help us understand that water is a precious resource in our region and help us keep that water flowing through that pipe network the best possible so that we're protecting the wildlife and protecting the environment. So let's move on to our next slide. Thank you. First of all, we're going to talk about clean water. That's the service that I help with. So as I mentioned, have a think. Have you used water this morning before you came to school? Were there any activities that you did that used clean water? So when you got up this morning, did you perhaps go and open the tap and brush your teeth? Perhaps you boiled the kettle, had a cup of tea. Perhaps you made your mum and dad a cup of tea. That would be nice. Good one. Hope you might have had a shower this morning too. Perhaps you had a bath last night. Let us know in the chat box some of the ways that you have used water before coming to school this morning. So I want you to start thinking about that lovely clean water coming out of the tap. Now, that's the taps in your home and in your street. What about on the planet? So as the planet as a whole, what kind of water do we expect to find there? So let's have a think for the moment of the different types of water that we find on planet Earth. So not just here in Kent, but all around the planet. So on the screen now, you're going to see a pie chart. This pie chart shows us the different percentages of water that are available on planet Earth at any one time, right now, even when it's raining. So as you can see on the screen, the biggest section of this pie chart is that kind of bright blue colour, and that is salty seawater. So salty seawater, Dan, where would the guys expect to find that?
Maybe when you go to the beach.
Absolutely. Yeah, go for a swim at the beach. That's where you'd find salty seawater. So as you can see on the planet as a whole, salty seawater is the most common type of water. And that makes a lot of sense because there's a lot of oceans and seas all around the planet in between all the different countries. Next up on there on the pie chart, you'll see that pale blue colour, and that's for frozen ice. So frozen ice is a form of water. Where would you expect to see frozen ice? Any ideas, Dan? Yeah. And the other one?
Antarctica.
Well, definitely Antarctica and the Arctic as well. So all those lovely ice glaciers that we imagine, that's where we've got frozen ice water. The next slice on this pie chart is that little thin dark blue section, and that is fresh water. So what is fresh water compared to salty seawater and frozen ice water? Well, let me tell you, fresh water is available right now. It's coming out of the sky down onto the roads as rain, and it is also in our rivers and in our lakes that is held there. That is fresh water. So it's not salty water like you find by the beach, but it is fresh water, and different animals live there to the animals that survive in salty water. Also, you'll find the fresh water, so for example, coming from rain, is held in our reservoirs. We have a really big reservoir in Kent. Do you remember the name of it, Dan?
Buell Water?
Yeah. Have any of you been to Buell Water? Have you seen that huge reservoir at Wadhurst, beg your pardon, at Buell Water? That's our biggest reservoir that's holding the rainwater and fresh water. And that's the first step in getting the water to us for our water companies to make that into clean and wholesome water that will come out of your tap and that you can use in your home. So, pretty interesting. Across the planet, first of all, there is salty seawater is the most common type of water available. Then it's frozen ice, and then it's fresh water. So let's move on to our next slide and have a look at the water cycle. So here's our water cycle. Have some of you been studying this at your school? Perhaps you've already had some thoughts about the water cycle and seen how it works. So let's start at the beginning of the water cycle, which really is back to thinking about the rivers, the lakes, the reservoir, and also the sea. So when the sun comes out, it warms up the water, and we get the water starts to come off as little droplets of steam from the water. Sometimes you can hardly see it because it's a very gradual temperature change. What's that process called?
Evaporation?
It is. He's absolutely right. So the water is warmed up by the sun, evaporates up, and is held in the clouds. It travels in clouds for a little while until the temperatures and the weather conditions are right, and it's ready to come down as rainfall. When we talk about rainfall in the water cycle, we give it a pretty clever name, starting with the letter P. Can you help them out, Dan?
Precipitation.
Yeah, spot on. Precipitation. It's another word for rain, and it describes the water falling from the clouds and back to the ground. So what happens when water falls to the ground and goes back into the reservoirs and lakes? So that's our fresh water that we looked at a moment ago. Okay, what's happening there is the water is getting used and creatures and wildlife are living in there, but a majority of that water is coming down, hitting the ground and soaking through the ground to underground lakes and aquifers under the ground where we're walking today. So all across Kent, under our feet, there are big underground lakes, which if you like are storing, they're like another type of reservoir, storing the fresh water under the ground. Companies like ourselves, Southern Water, we have different boreholes and extraction points across our region, and there we use our pumping stations to pump that water at high pressure from those underground lakes and over to our treatment works. So I hope you can see them on the slide. You'll see the little box there that shows the shape of our treatment works. So the water is evaporated up to the clouds, travelled along, come down as rain or precipitation, been soaked into the ground or being held in the lakes or reservoirs and rivers, and then the water companies are taking the correct amount of water and pumping it back into our treatment sites. So what happens at our treatment sites? Well, we go through 5 different processes with the water, take it through different processes to make sure that it's safe to drink and safe to use at the other end. Because the water we find in our rivers and lakes and the reservoir, although it's fresh water, we wouldn't really be wanting to wash your hair with it or wash your clothes. It's not ready to drink, is it? You're so right. So it needs to go through a process where we filter out the sticks and leaves. We also go through different sedimentation processes, and we do some final processes where we kill the bacteria as well that's in the water to make sure it's really safe and healthy to drink. All along the way, we're testing the water at the different points to make sure that we're hitting all of our targets and the water is moving along the process correctly, so that we know that when it's ready to pump back to the homes, we know that it's really safe to drink and use. So all the time that's happening and we're being monitored, and when the company like Southern Water decides, yep, that water's reached the right conditions now, it's safe, it gets pumped back out to your homes, back down that pipe network and out to your tap. So that tap that you opened this morning, perhaps to brush your teeth and do all those activities that we thought of a moment ago, well, that's possible with that clean water supply. You use it, you shower, you have your cup of tea, brush your teeth with it, pull the plug or flush away, and that water is taken back into our network. Then it goes back into our sewer network. That's the part that Dan looks after. So his team then take that wastewater, and again, it goes through a series of different processes to make sure that the wastewater is cleaned up to different levels. And then it is ready to, when it's reached the correct level, it's ready to release back into the rivers and streams or back out to sea. So why is it important for it to go back out to sea or back into the rivers? Any ideas?
All over again, I think.
You're absolutely right. That's it. That's how the water cycle closes. So when it comes back from the wastewater treatment sites, it goes, when it's reached the correct conditions, it's ready to go back out to sea or back out into the rivers and lakes. And the reason for that is it's then ready to be heated up by the sun and evaporated up into the clouds again. So as you can see, the same water, the same droplets of water are going round and round this cycle all the time, every day, every month, every year, all the way. And this has been happening since the beginning of time. Yes, a really long time. So we know what that means is that even now you might be drinking some of the same water that dinosaurs drank back in way billions of years ago. So that's something to think about. So it's important to remember no new water is being produced. Water is just going round and round this water cycle every day in our environment. Thank you so much. Let's have a look at the next slide. So now you've learned a bit more and we've recapped about that water cycle. We're going to test you with some questions. And we would like you to know whether these are true or false.
True or false?
Can you do that? If you think this answer is true, hands on heads. If you think the answer is false, cross your arms. Now, we're going to get your teachers to have a look at how that goes for you, and they're going to tell us in the chat box how you guys score at the end. So I hope you're ready for some of this. Dan, you're going to play along too? Absolutely. Okay, let's go to the next slide and our first question. True or false? Each person in the UK uses 130 litres of tap water every day. Have a think. Now, 130 litres of tap water every day. What does that look like? Well, we've put a picture here on the slide for you of those litre bottles of water that we can buy in the shop. That's 1 litre. So if somebody is using 130 litres per day, it would be 130 equivalent of that measurement that we see in the water bottles that we could buy in the shop. But remember, they're drawing it from the tap. They're not buying bottles of water in the shop, but that shows us the amount of water. What do you think? 130 a day?
I reckon maybe false or true.
Dan's a bit undecided. What about you guys? You've got to make a final decision. What are you going to stick with?
True.
Dan's sitting with true. Let's see what's the truth. Let's see what's the answer on the next slide. True. Well done. Great stuff, everyone. I wonder how many of you answered true. Right, let's go on to the next question. True or false? New water is made each day on planet Earth. True or false? Is new water made every day, or are we using the same water that's going round in that water cycle? Sandwich Junior School, I think they have some answers coming through. Good job, guys. Dan sticking with false. Are you joining him? Oh, some interesting answers coming through in the chat box. Let's see what the answer is. False. That's right. New water isn't made every day. We're using that same water in the water cycle. Next question. Only 1% of the water on Earth can be used by animals and plants. True or false? Have a think back, guys, to that pie chart. We saw there was a lot of salty seawater. Is that water that we would use on animals and plants? Or frozen ice? Is that water that we would use on animals or plants? Fresh water, is that something we can use with animals and plants?
Oh, I'm gonna go true.
Okay, Dan's going true. What about you guys? Let's find out the answer. True. You're dead right. Well done, Dan. Absolutely. You wouldn't use salty seawater for your garden or for your pets because that water really isn't safe to drink. So it's too salty. So fresh water, yeah, your pets could have a little paddle around in that and drink around in that. But you wouldn't use salty seawater, which is the most amount of water available on planet Earth at any one time. Let's go on to the next question. True or false? We need to start saving water now so we have enough water for everyone in the future. Okay, so is that true or false? I wonder. We've learned that there's the water cycle, that we're all sharing the same water, but different things have been happening on the planet. So more people have been being born, more houses are being built, and more people are taking a demand on that water cycle, on that fresh water that's available. So is there enough water to go around? Oh, Year 5 at Roseacres have some answers for us. Any others of you out there? Right, let's find out the answer. True. Well done, Dan. Well done. Absolutely, we do. We need to help the environment. We need to help the planet and our neighbours and communities by using water really wisely. The water cycle has just a limited potential of water that's available for the whole of the planet. There's more than enough for everyone, but we need to take care because especially when it's hot or it hasn't rained for a while, then those are times when there is less water available for everybody. But when it's hot, people tend to use more water. So we need to make sure that we're never using too much so there's enough water to go around for everyone. So we've got some tips now for you and see if you can know some extra tips about how we can use water wisely. Let's have a look at the next slide. One of the great ways that you can make sure that there's enough water for everyone is making sure you have a short shower. You any good at this, Dan?
Yeah, I think maybe 5 minutes.
Ooh, 5 minutes. Well, the recommendation is 4 minutes. 4 minutes. Okay. 4 minutes of shower. Who's the person who has the longest showers in your house? Do anybody take a 4-minute shower? Or do you have some brothers or sisters, mums and dads that take longer? People with long hair, sometimes they say to me, oh, I need longer than 4 minutes. Well, we all need to think about how much water we're using and use it really wisely. And our recommendation on this slide is for 4 minutes. Let's move on. And we'll move, turning on the taps. Turn on all the taps. So what's this child doing in this picture, Dan?
I think they're brushing their teeth in the morning and, or possibly before bed.
Yeah, I think you're dead right. And it's really easy to forget to switch off the taps when you're brushing your teeth. That water doesn't need to be running all the time that you're busy brushing away. So I want you to do a challenge this evening when you get home and check whether you are turning off the tap when you brush your teeth. And are other people in your family doing it, or are some of them leaving it running? Well, if they're leaving it running, all that lovely water is running away and not being used. and it's a waste to the environment, really. So let's see if you can challenge yourselves this evening and make sure you're turning off that tap when you brush your teeth. The next slide, please. So do you recognize this from home?
Oh.
Yeah, it definitely is. So some of you at home will have this kind of toilet flush, and it's got a small droplet on one side, which is a half flush, and a larger droplet on the other side, which is for a full flush. So it's interesting that Dan's going to talk about the sewer network a bit more in a moment, and talk about what happens when you flush the loo and what happens to the water that's taken away. But you need to know, first of all, that every time we flush the loo, that's using up about 30% of the water that we use every day on flushing alone. So it uses up a lot of water, which is why people thought, well, not everything we do on the loo needs a full flush every time. Sometimes a pee could have a half flush, and that would use less water. So if you've just been for a pee in the loo, which would you use, the half flush or the full flush? Good news. Thank you for that slide. You would just use a small flush. What about if you've been for a number 2? What would you use, a small flush or the big flush? Hopefully there's some answers coming through for you guys out there. It's something that happens every day. Let's see what the answer is on the slide. Big flush. Excellent. Next slide, please. So you're getting on board now. You'll get training almost complete to be a water hero. So you've learned a lot about water today, and that no new water is being created, and we are all stewards of the existing water that we've got on planet Earth. We need to look after that so there's enough for everyone, especially when it's hot out and or it hasn't rained for a very long time. We've told you some of our top water saving tips, but we'd like to know in the chat box now if you guys have any water saving tips. And the good news is there are lots of things we can do to make sure that we're really mindful with the water that we use. So it's not a difficult mission to join. It just takes a bit of extra thinking, really, a little bit more mindfulness, and just to check whether everybody in your house is doing it as well, because it's great if you're switching off the tap, but it's even greater as well if everybody in your house is trying their best as well to save water. So we're going to give you some time right now to pop any ideas you've got or questions into that chat box through your teacher. We'll be able to help you, and we'll be looking out for some questions to see that we can answer. So we're going to have a scroll through as well and see if there's any that's ready that we could answer for you. Let's see.
Water and kept it cool in the fridge.
Yeah.
So fill up a bottle of water, of tap water, keep it in the fridge so you're not running that tap to make sure until it's cold and wasting that water. Is that all right?
That's a really good idea. So Dan's dead right. Just when we want to sometimes get a cold drink of water from the tap, we run that tap for a very long time till it feels icy cold. But he's right, if we filled up a jug and put it in the fridge, it would always be cold and ready to use. And we wouldn't need to run it away at the beginning and waste some of that water. Hey, I've seen there's some guys from West Sussex on the chat. Welcome, Goldcrest School and Rake Primary School from West Sussex. Great to have you on board. Sandwich Junior School have said smaller baths. What a great idea. Wow. What do you mean, I wonder? Smaller amounts of water, or do you mean smaller baths? Both are good ideas. Fantastic. Another one here. You're good at this actually, aren't you? And they've said use soap without running the tap. Excellent idea. This is something we do when we're camping, and water is really precious to us when we're out camping as a family. So we might use the water tap, and then we will close it, foam up our hands. We don't need to have it running while we're doing that. You can foam up the soap and then open it again when you're ready to rinse away. Save lots of litres of water that way. Oh, yes. Innovators at Hope Community School in Sidcup, Kent, welcome. They've come up with a great idea. When washing the dishes, don't leave the tap running.
Yeah, so you could even, if hopefully you've got washing up bowls at home, and fill that up instead of I see lots of people sometimes running the taps and they've got like a sponge or a cloth and they think it's really quick and easy because you're not filling the bowl up. But actually, you could sometimes be using twice as much water just by letting that tap run and not filling up a bowl, which you could then use on something else to water the plants or something.
Yeah, definitely can. Great question has come through from Year 5, Roseacres. They would like to know what happens if the frozen ice all melted. Really good question. So that's back to our pie chart at the beginning. So we saw there that there was salty seawater and frozen ice. And you mentioned Antarctica and Arctic were the two places where we might find that kind of ice. So we know that climate change, generally, the planet is getting a little bit hotter and the ice is already starting to melt in those areas. So that ice is melting, but that is becoming salty seawater again. So salty seawater isn't water that's ready for water companies to start pumping away and making safe for houses to drink. Salty seawater is just still salty seawater. So the frozen ice that we have on the planet, that just converts back into salty seawater. It doesn't give us extra fresh water to use. But with more salty seawater on the planet Earth, there is something else that happens as well, which is that the sea levels are rising. And that means that some areas can become at risk of flooding as sea levels rise. But this happens very gradually over a good number of years. It's not something that's going to happen very quickly. This happens slowly over a number of years. So there's plenty of time for people to make any changes they need to make if they are perhaps living along the coast or living on an island, a tropical island somewhere that would be affected if sea levels are rising. But great question, guys.
I think we've just had one more come in. So use water from a paddling pool to water the garden. That's a fantastic idea. Absolutely. Yeah, we could encourage everyone to do that, wouldn't we?
Yeah, so when it gets hot again, hard to imagine today when it's so rainy across the region, but when it gets hot again, then definitely we can, when you fill up the paddling pool, before your mums and dads let that water run away, make sure that they could perhaps use that to water the plants. And rather than fill the paddling pool and empty it every day, why not think about filling the paddling pool, keeping it up for a few days and just topping it up with a little bit of water. So you're not having to use all that water from scratch again, but you're just topping it up a little bit every day. That's another way you can help save water as well. There's been another great idea coming from Hope Community School, which is to use buckets of rainwater to water plants. Plants love rainwater. They prefer rainwater to tap water. And so it's great if you can use that in your plants, or if you have a water butt in the garden which collects rainwater, and that's something you can use.
On the water bill, because you're not using that fresh water to water the plants, so you're saving water as well.
Yeah,
which is great.
Brilliant stuff. Okay, I think you guys are doing well in becoming water heroes for clean water. Now let's move on to the next slide, and we're going to have a look with Dan about some of the wastewater supply.
We're going to start off just by having a quick look at a video, and it goes on to why the sewers were invented and why we use them today. Okay, so enjoy the video.
Water from sinks, dishwashers, washing machines, baths and toilets, along with runoff from the roofs and roads, drains into a network of interconnecting pipes known as sewers. From here, they flow via gravity or are pumped to a wastewater treatment plant where water is treated and cleaned before being released either into rivers or, in coastal areas, out to sea. It was relatively recently that we solved the problem of what to do with the water we had used, including human waste. Back in the 1500s, waste used to drain from an open ditch into a river, the same river people drank from. By 1800, overcrowding in towns and cities had made the problem even worse. Waterborne diseases like cholera and typhoid killed thousands, and you can just imagine the smell. In 1849, an outbreak of cholera in London resulted in the deaths of 2,000 people every week. It was widely believed that disease was spread by the smell, not the germs and bacteria contained in the sewage and waste. Some people used cesspits, deep holes under or near their house, or waste just ran into the streets after it was thrown out of windows. Night soil men would collect the waste in carts and take the contents to farms to be ploughed into the soil as fertiliser. Did you know that we used to be used for tanning leather? From the 1850s on, richer people started buying the new water closets, or WCs, for their homes. But this didn't help with the existing way that waste was disposed of. The contents of the new loos still went into a hole in the ground or ended up untreated back in the rivers. It was only after the great stink from the Thames in the hot summer of 1858 that Parliament finally did something. They asked Joseph Bazalgette, chief engineer of the Metropolitan Board of Works, to come up with a solution. Bazalgette's brilliant idea was to build a network of interconnecting pipes underground. You can see here his original designs. Notice the egg-shaped construction, which creates turbulence as the wastewater passes through the narrowed section. This helps break down the solids. The new sewers took the wastewater directly to the Thames estuary, far away from where most people lived. Work began soon after on Brighton's sewerage network, using Bazalgette's egg-shaped design. It ran under the centre of town and then out to sea. Similar projects to provide a network of sewers in other towns and cities soon followed.
Okay, now I think next slide, please. So we're so lucky from that video that we've got sewer network that will collect all of our wastewater. So when we've been to the toilet, when we've emptied the bath, when we do our washing up. So what an amazing design that Joseph Bazalgette came up with. So from our homes, how big do we think our sewer pipes are? So from when it comes from our house until it hits the main sewer in the rows, any ideas of how big our sewers might be? Do we think they're this big? Do we think they're this big? Do we think they're this big or even smaller? Alex, do you maybe want to have a guess in a moment?
No, these on the slide, they look quite big, Dan.
They do, don't they? So,
but is that true for our houses?
So from our homes, it's only 10 centimetres in diameter.
Wow.
So it's maybe about this big. So you could mostly roll an orange down there, but it might cause a block, but that's how big they are. So they're quite small from our homes. They're only designed to carry the 3 Ps: pee, poo, and toilet paper. So that's all we need down there.
That's easy to remember.
It does, doesn't it? Okay, can we have the next slide? So the challenges that we face in our network, so from our network that we have that goes from where we are today all the way to Australia and back again, we end up having 23,000 sewer blockages in that network each year. That's a huge amount. So 66% of those blockages are the wrong things going down the loos and the kitchen sinks. Things like wet wipes, fats, oils and greases from the kitchen sink when you do your washing up. Even flushable wet wipes shouldn't be going down there because they block the pipes up. Each year we remove 9,000 tons of wet wipes from our network. That's an equivalent of 3,000 hippos. Can you imagine 3,000 hippos rolling around in our sewer network? Huge. It is. And more than 3,000 homes are flooded each year because of fats, oils, greases, and wet wipes. That's huge. Can you imagine being flooded in your home? Not very nice. Just from wet wipes, maybe. Wow.
I like the sound of that.
No. Let's have the next slide. So bit similar to the true or false. We're going to get you just to say flush it or bin it to see what we can work out, what we can put down the toilet or in the waste bin. Let's have the next slide and see what we've got. So a nappy, would we flush it or would we bin it? What do you think?
I think we'd bin it.
Absolutely, Alex. Yeah, we put that in the bin. Sometimes we have found them in the sewers and they cause blockages. One of those 23,000 blockages from people putting nappies down the toilet. Incredible.
It seems like an easy thing to do.
It is, but the wrong thing, unfortunately. So let's have the next picture that will come up. So cotton buds, would we flush it or would we bin it? Have a think.
It doesn't seem as big as a nappy.
It's quite small, isn't it?
Yeah. So would it be okay to flush it?
Unfortunately not. Because a cotton bud will stay exactly as it is. It won't break down and it could get caught in the sewer pipes. So we need to put that in the waste bin. Next slide, please. So oil. So this could be fats, oils, greases, butter, margarine, anything like that. So would we put it down the toilet, so flush it, or would we bin it? Any ideas?
Well, I'd like to think, I don't think I've ever flushed the cooking oil away. Not sure though.
You might make a mess as well. So we could, what we'd do is we'd bin that, but what we might also do is wait for it to cool down and pour it into a container or mop it up with kitchen roll and then place it in the waste bin. We have to be careful with oil because sometimes it can get really hot. So make sure you've got someone supervising or ask an adult to do it for you. So yeah, what we'd make sure we put that in the bin.
Okay.
Next slide. So plasters. So when you've cut your finger, maybe put that plaster on it. Once we've used it, would we put it in the bin or would we flush it? Quite small, isn't it?
It's small again, but you did say that even though it was small, the cotton buds shouldn't be flushed away. It should be binned. But this is even more flexible, maybe.
It is, yeah.
Could that create a blockage if it was flushed?
It would, yeah. So we put that in the bin. So make sure all plasters, even the little plasticky bits that we pull off to put it on, that goes in the bin as well. So make sure plasters are always put in the bin. Next slide, please. So P, we've spoken about it already.
None of you have said bin it.
Yeah, we've spoken about it already. We'd use a small flush, remember, and we'd flush it, obviously. So yeah, next slide, please. So food waste. So would we bin that or would we flush it? Have a think. Alex, I'm going to come to you for an answer.
Well, if I had apple cores and Coke cans and those kinds of things, I'd definitely put them in the bin.
Absolutely, yeah, we put that in the bin. I once went to a sewer blockage once, and you never guess what? I found banana skins in the sewer, apple cores, and someone had put them down there and it had caused a block. So yeah, definitely put that in the bin. Or some of you in your areas might have food waste bins, so you could recycle it that way and pop it into the food waste bin.
Even
So
better for the environment.
absolutely.
Good
Yeah.
idea.
Next slide, please. Maybe. So yes, oh,
There
here we are.
it is.
So toilet wipes. So this could maybe be bathroom cleaner wipes or even those flushable, I say flushable, wet wipes that we use. So would we flush them or would we bin them?
Well, here I'm not sure, Dan, because you're right. Some of the wet wipes say flushable. So Yeah, I must admit, I think in my house, we might be tempted to flush it away. Is it not okay to flush them if it says flushable?
So it's very misleading because they do flush, but lots of other things would flush as well. Mobile phone, would you flush that?
Try not to.
Yeah, so even though it says flushable, unfortunately, they just don't disintegrate like toilet roll does. So we have to make sure that those go in the bin. Next slide, please. So just a quick recap here. So we've got a few pictures here. So on the left, we've got a very greasy sewer pipe. So, as you can see there, it's got the measurement of the 10 centimeters, but unfortunately it's all clogged up with fats, oils and greases. Because what happens when it goes down the kitchen sinks, it all glutes together because it's all very nasty and sticky, and it just sticks to our sewer pipes. So yeah, make sure that fat, oil and grease, we put that in the waste bin. At the top there, we've got some of our friends that have been found at our wastewater treatment works. So we've got a rubber duck there. We've got, I think, Pooh, so Winnie the Pooh, and lots of other characters that have been fished out from our wastewater treatment works.
And someone's flushed those down the loo.
Unfortunately, I don't know how they've got them down there,
but
poor old teddies have ended up at the treatment works, and I bet they're really smelly as well. Very smelly. Yeah. So at the bottom there, we've got some of our filters at our wastewater treatment works, and they filtered out our unflushables. So unflushables are things like wet wipes, cotton buds. What else are unflushables? Plasters, yeah. Cotton wool, that doesn't degrade properly as well. So if that goes down the toilet, it clogs up. So there are filters at the bottom. And then on the right-hand side, that is somebody's bedroom. And what's happened is we've had a sewer block and it's managed to flood someone's home just because of the wrong things going down the toilets.
Stinky.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like that to be my bedroom.
No. And you can just think, just from a wet wipe going down the toilet can have that much of an impact to someone's bedroom. Devastating, really. But we all know what we need to do to stop this from happening. Let's have a look at our next slide. So a bit disgusting. Yeah. So do you remember I said how big your sewer pipes are? So they're 10 centimeters in diameter. So one day I was checking the sewer network and I put my CCTV camera down there. So it's like a really small camera that can fit into the sewer. And this is the picture that it beamed back. So all the gloopy stuff around the sides and the top there, that is fats, oils and greases. So this is where someone has maybe washed up their pans and plates thinking washing up liquid will degrease it, but actually it's still going into our sewer network and it coats our sewer pipes. So yeah.
Bottle there?
Yeah, so this one here, if you can see it, so where it's coated this bottle, this is what it does to sewer pipes and it blocks up. So yeah.
Oh, that looks horrible.
It's pretty disgusting and very smelly as well. So that is what fats, oils and greases looks like in the sewer. Let's have a look at the next slide.
Like that for lunch?
Oh no, absolutely not. So this is a small fatberg. So it's a bit like an iceberg, but of fats, oils and greases. So we had gone to one of our wastewater pumping station. So that's where it pushes the wastewater onto the next point because our sewer network is fed by gravity. So if you're on a hill, all the sewer networks will connect into and then go down to a point. When it needs to go uphill, it has a pumping station that pumps it uphill and then onto the next point. And that lump of fat, oil and grease had to be taken out to help the wastewater network flow properly. So yeah, someone had a very greasy meal that day. Let's have a look at our next slide. Here we go. So I mentioned the word unflushables. So unflushables is things like wet wipes, cotton buds, nappies, cotton wool. So on the left, that's me picking up a massive amount of unflushables from our network, and that's really heavy. That is, it's full of water. Is that another one of our pumping stations? It's very smelly. It wasn't a very nice day for me, but that has to be manually taken out of the pumping station or the wastewater treatment works, and it has to either go into landfill or be burnt. So you can imagine the impact of the environment. It's not very nice, and it just causes havoc on the network.
There's some flushable wet wipes in this too.
Absolutely. People think, and I'm sure many of you today thought flushable wet wipes are okay to go down, but they're just not, because look at the damage it can cause. So the picture on the right hand side is a bag of wet wipes, and I think also in there is a nappy. And again, this was all taken out of the wastewater network because there was a report of a sewage blockage. So that's basically when you flush your toilet and it's not going anywhere, that would indicate a sewer block. So we have to go out and unblock them. So that is just a bag of wet wipes. Pretty disgusting. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at our next slide. So, Alex, and the rest of you that are listening, how much plastic can be contained in one wet wipe? Have a think. Do we think it's A, 55%, B, 75%, or C, 90%?
Wet wipes, let's have a think. I never thought about there being plastic in there.
Plastic, do you reckon?
I wonder what schools think.
Any ideas?
Well, I'm going to guess 55%, maybe half and half, half something else and a bit of plastic. Is that right?
It's actually C, can be up to 90% in one wet wipe. So Alex, if you were to use a wet wipe, if you used it once, would you use it again?
No.
So actually, a wet wipe that contains plastic is actually a single-use plastic.
That's not good. That doesn't sound good for the environment
Not
at
good
all.
at all. Okay, so let's have a look at the next slide. So why do we think it's important to look after our sewer network? So it is really important. Got some more pictures, I think, to show you. So if we have a look at the next slide. Oh my goodness. So the picture on the left, someone did have a lovely bathroom. So again, this is because someone has flushed wet wipes and other unflushable items down the toilet. And just under the radiator there, can you see there's a little hole in the floor? So all the waste water from the network has spilled up through that gap in the floor and has spilled out onto the lovely tiled bathroom. And yes, it's used toilet roll. There could be unflushables in there and poo and wee. Not very nice. Not nice at all. And it could have all been helped by not flushing the wrong things down the toilet. So the picture on the right hand side,
What happened there?
Yeah, it looks quite shocking. So I'm hoping that the person here was renovating their bathroom. If not, the toilet pan's been blown off the floor and the wall.
No way.
Yeah, that's how much force the wastewater's had on that home.
Wow.
So yeah, so again, the wrong things going down the toilets and sinks.
They weren't in there at the time.
Hopefully not. So yeah, the impact of flushing the wrong things down the toilets and the wrong things going down the kitchens and sinks. Let's have a look to see what surprises we've got next.
No way. What's Paw Patrol doing there?
Exactly. So as you can see, there's two shelves there. So this was from our wastewater treatment works. So the operators that work there have got a little toy collection and mobile phone collection. So we've got two mobile phones along the top shelves. We've got some characters from Paw Patrol. And then can you see on the bottom shelf next to the Paw Patrol, we've got somebody's false teeth. So yeah,
they've fallen down the toilet.
Yeah. So they may have been sick and they've fallen out and fallen down the toilet pan and been flushed all the way to our wastewater treatment works.
Oh.
So there's lots of surprises that we get there.
Gosh, we need to keep an eye on our baby brothers and sisters when they're playing with their little plastic toys around the toilet or in the bathroom, because they could be flushing them away when we're not looking.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's have a look at the next slide. So protecting the environment. So it's really important. You've learned lots from us today, but also when you're walking and you're going along the seafront, and you're maybe walking down the pavements and you see when it's raining, a bit like today, when the rainwater collects and goes down into the road drains, if you're near the sea or near the river, sometimes it doesn't need treatment, that wastewater, because it can go safely straight out into the environment. So if people are littering and they manage to go down the drains, they might go straight into a river or go straight out to sea. So we need to be careful if we see a litter bin that we pop all our rubbish in there to make sure we're protecting the environment.
Not a good reason not to litter. So we're coming to the end now. Let's look at our last few slides. I hope we've given you guys lots of good ideas. Here are Dan's top tips.
Yeah, so make sure in the bathroom we only flush the 3 P's: pee, paper, and poo. And also we could include a 4th one on there when we're not feeling very well, which is puke. We could add the secret 4th P.
We'll keep a lookout for those.
Yeah. Okay,
on to our next slide. So have you got time to give us some of your questions? We're going to have a look in the chat box as well, see what's come through, and see if we can help you with any questions about what we've talked about today. So we've talked about the clean water system and the journey of clean water, and we've talked a lot about all the things that happen in the wastewater network and all of those unflushables. I've certainly learned a lot this afternoon. Let's see, any questions coming through we can help you with?
Hi Alex, we've got a question here. Can you catch diseases from the sewers?
It's a really good question.
That is a really good question. Yeah, so if you remember through the historical video that we went through, so there was the great stink from the Thames, which is why Joseph Battlejet was sort of asked to build the sewer network. So things like cholera, I can't remember the rest.
But those were in olden times, weren't they, really, Dan? Yeah.
Absolutely. We have to be really careful that when we go to the toilet, we do wash our hands. And our wastewater operatives have to be careful when they're dealing at the wastewater treatment works and when they go to the pumping stations, that they're wearing the correct PPE when they visit the sites.
But the good news is that they're working hard every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to do that process, to make sure that the water is cleaned up to the right amount so it's safe to be ready and put back into our system. So the water that comes into our houses is completely clean and safe to drink. And when we flush away, that is a clean place as well. But yes, there are some infections and diseases and bacteria living in there. And that's part of the process that we go through to make sure that's all cleaned up and safe for everybody to use. Any other questions?
We have a question from Sandwich Junior School. You have mentioned that you've poured some horrible things out of the drains, but they're asking how much stuff have you poured out of the drain? So I don't know if they mean in total or what types of things.
Types of things, well, you've seen from some of the pictures that we've had false teeth,
Bank cards.
Bank cards. We found recently lots of face masks have managed to get to our treatment works.
The amount that we've pulled out, I guess we don't 100% know. It differs every day, but definitely we know that talk about the 3,000 hippos worth of wet wipes going through the system. That's an awful lot to think about.
Yeah, there's huge amounts.
Thank you. Here's an interesting one. This is from Sandwich School, Junior School. How many people work for the water company?
Wow, that's a really good question. So Southern Water employs roughly, I think it's about 2,500 people.
Yeah.
So, and they can be from people that work at the freshwater sites to the wastewater sites to the people that work in the office.
That's
dealing
right.
with phone calls.
Yep, from customers and also looking after the website. We also have lots of scientists that work for us and engineers that are every day making improvements and testing the water and making sure everything we do is absolutely tip top. So Dan's right, about 2,500 people work at Southern Water. About 1,000 of those are the guys you'll see out in the vans, digging up the road or visiting your home and helping you. And about another 1,500 are working in the offices, in treatment centres and in our labs.
That's
great
brilliant.
Question, Sandwich School. Thank you.
Thank you. And here we have another question from the Year 3 innovators at Hope Community School. Is it really dark in the sewers?
Very dark, yeah. So a lot of them are covered with inspection chambers and covers. So sometimes when I go and lift them up, it's very dark, lots of spiders. Spiders love it in the sewers because it's nice and dark. But yeah, if you were to go down there without a torch, I don't think you see very much.
And we have another question here is, if it did not rain, how would we get fresh water?
Wow.
Good question. So the good news is it does always rain all over the planet. Obviously, some parts of it are drier than others, but here in the UK, we do always get rain. But what we have found is with the changes in climate now, we can go longer stretches without rain. So what happens then is that we're definitely using our reservoirs and some of the places where we hold water so that we can manage the supply so that it's even throughout the year. Also, don't forget that some of that water supply is coming from underground lakes and aquifers, and that can sometimes take many years to filter through the ground, and then we're able to pump that back into the system. So that's another resource that we've got there that is really on a kind of different timetable to our lakes and reservoirs because of the time it's taken to filter through the ground. So there'll always be a supply. But it's important to use it wisely. So we really hope you guys are going to join us as water heroes. We want you to help us use clean water wisely and help us keep the sewer network clean. We hope we've got you on board as our new recruits. It's excellent to be a water-wise superhero. There's so much you can do to help your community and help your neighbourhood to have a great fresh supply of water every single day and enjoy it every single day. We've loved chatting to you guys. We've loved all your questions and thank you so much for taking part with us.
Thank you very much.